by and watch him swinging. His name was Mek, Zichrono Livracha. We moved to the satellite labor camp. It was in Shanz. And Shanz is well known to you, Shanzer yeshivas. The labor camp was about 1,200 people, men in barracks, women in other barracks. And the adults went out to work every morning. The children stayed in the camp. One day, it was in March, I was playing with another 6 children in the barrack. My father did not go to work because he was assigned to do certain things in the camp. He ran over to me and the kids, he says, "We got to hide immediately." He opened up a plank above the second bunk bed. We climbed inside. He closed it off, and we watched through the cracks of the wood what was going on. This was the children's selection. Several trucks came in and started to collect the children and the elder people in the camp. I'm watching the whole thing, what was happening, as they dragged the children, throw them on the trucks. When it was all over, trucks pulled away, and my father came, he opened up the plank, and we climbed out. There were 7 of us. In the evening, when all the columns came back from work, the parents didn't find their children. Can you imagine the unbelievable crying of all the parents? The children were gone. The children that my father saved, they hugged him and kissed him. But then the other said, "Why didn't you save my children?" He couldn't. There wasn't enough time. From that day on, all the children who were left, the 7, we had to go to work also. They dressed us up in coats, longer coats, with hats, and as we lined up in columns to go out to work, we made sure that we stand between adults as they marched us out. And the work that I was assigned to was to sort shoes from German soldiers who were killed. They took off their shoes and then they fixed it and then gave it back to other soldiers. Anyone caught stealing a pair of shoes from there was shot. Well, I didn't have any shoes in my shoes. I was outgrowing my shoes. I needed a pair of shoes. I found a size which almost fit me. It was a little larger than me, but almost. And I scuffed it up with a knife and put schmutz on top of it so that they will not notice that these are German shoes. I had a good pair of shoes. Then they decided to liquidate Schanzer Lager, and they marched us out again. Interesting thing in that camp. The commandant, an SS guy, was an elderly guy. It so happens that he fell in love with one of the Jewish women. And she moved in with him. And he was more tolerant to the rest of us because, I don't know, was it the new Esther Amalka in our camp? I don't know. They walked us. We didn't know where we were going. We crossed a bridge, a river, and on the bridge, one of the guys from our column jumped on the railing of the bridge. He cried out, "Shema Yisrael," and jumped into the river. It was a long jump. We looked and we could see his head bobbing up and down in the river, and the guards were shooting at him, and then all of a sudden disappeared. They brought us to a train, loaded us up, and we were going towards the direction of Germany. And the reason that we noticed it was Germany is because we began to notice that the electric pilings changed from wooden, which was in Lithuania, primitive, to very modern type of electric pilings. We came to, after a few days, we came to a place called Stutthof. They took out all the women and left all the men in the on the train. My sister went with my mom. I stayed with my father. After another day or two on the train, we came to a place which was not far from Munich, Germany. We were taken to a camp called Landsberg. It was a fairly long distance of walking again. And as we came through the gate in the camp Landsberg, there were German officers, SS guys, lined up in rows. And as we walked through between the rows, they decided each one has to hit us. So we started running, they hit us, and they hit us. Until we came to an open place, and then they assigned barracks for us. In that camp, as I thought it was close to Munich, I could see the Allied planes flying over to bomb Munich. And I can't tell you the pleasure I had when I saw those planes coming by. German fighters would try to attack the bombers, but they were protected by American fighters. And I could see the dogfights in the air. And I could see the German planes being shot down, and I could sit there and I was laughing, and my father grabbed a hold of me, pulled me into the barrack. He'd be stupid, be quiet. After being there a short period of time, they decided to take away the children from that camp. There were 131 boys. They separated us in one little barrack, and my father knew what was happening. He says, look, if we survive the war, we have a large family in the United States. I want you to remember one thing, 1819 Wesley Avenue in Evanston. That sunk in my head. Every day I kept thinking 1819 Wesley Avenue. There was no Illinois, he just said Evanston. I found out later it was in Evanston, also in Indiana. Trucks came, 2 trucks. They piled us on the trucks and took us away. And I remember my father standing there. He knew that he'll probably never see me again. Among the 131 boys, there were 2 brothers. One was 17 years old. He was the oldest of the group. He decided to join his 10-year-old brother to protect him. And he became the protector of all of us. He was a strong kid, knew how to handle things. The trucks went towards Dachau. On the way, the drivers of the truck decided that they have to have a little beer. So they stop the trucks, they go out to a little cafe, they sit down, drink their beer, and we're sitting in the trucks looking at them, you know. They took us to Dachau, and this was my first encounter with a real concentration camp. Rows and rows of barracks. And the sign on top, Arbeit macht frei. Very organized. We were in Dachau a short period of time, probably not more than 10 days. Again, they took us out. Again, we marched. Again, they put us on trains. Where we were going, we didn't know. But we came to one place on the train, and there were people standing in the, by the railroad there, and we asked them, one of the kids of ours spoke Polish. He asked them in Polish, where is this train going? And the guy said, we realized that we were going to be killed. So in the train, we opened up two planks. We were able to lift it up, and we decided to get out of the train. The first kid lowered himself down. We watched through the little window, and we saw that he managed to get up and run towards the forest. The second one went. We looked for him, we couldn't see him, and from far we see that he was on the tracks, between the tracks. He must have hit his head or he was shot. He didn't move. The rest of us didn't have the cheshik anymore to jump the train. We were on the train for probably about two or 3 days. And in the evening, it stopped. They got us all out, and we were marching again. And this was very shocking to me. We arrived in Birkenau. I saw women running around without their hair. It's the first time I see women without their hair. Like little skeletons, running, running, running. As we are marching, I asked the SS guard, where are you taking us now? He says, shut your mouth. Okay. We marched. The camp is huge. And the towers, the guard towers, the electric fences all the way around us. We come to the crematorium. We are all lined up. And interesting, among the now we're 129 boys. Among the 100 was a 6-year-old kid. His name was Mengele. The oldest guy taught him how to give commands in German. The commands, to the right, to the left, take off your hats, bow to the Germans. That little Mengele gave all the commands. We marched in a unison, like a military unit. The SS officer stands in front of the crematorium, and he talks to the other one. This is a kind of a nice group of boys. Are they zur Vernichtung? I mean, are we going to kill them? And the other one says, no, let them go to the camp now. This is how close we were to being gassed that evening. We were put in a big barrack. The barrack, a tent actually. People from that tent were already taken out to be gassed, so you could see all their stuff on the floor. I could see watches, I could see money, I could see gold. Everything was there because they were taken out naked. The area was worked on by the Sonderkommando. These were Jews who helped in the gassing of the people. There was a Jewish man. He came by to us and he says, Kinder, kids, he says, you're okay now. They marched us out again and brought us to Birkenau Lager A. It was A, B, C, D, and E. A was the camp for a transition camp. We were packed in barracks, 3 tiers, the bunk beds. They shoved in 10, 15, whatever they could shove us in. Each one got a blanket, and there were straw mattresses. We were very tired. I fell asleep. In the morning, they gave us, they called it coffee. It was a black brew. It was taste horrible. I can tell you it wasn't coffee that you get here in Chicago. Starbucks, right. In the evening, they gave us a bowl of soup and a little piece of bread. The way soup was handed out in Birkenau is that each barrack had a main capo, the leader of the barrack, and he had underlings who helped him. Most of them were Gentiles. As a matter of fact, there's only one leader of the barrack who was Jewish, only one, a Polish Jew. The rest of them were all Germans. The way they had it is that they had German criminals, Germans political prisoners, and Jews, and each one had a different triangle. The criminals had a black triangle, Jews had a yellow triangle, and the politicals had a red triangle. So we knew who was who. On Rosh Hashanah, the first selection in Birkenau. They line us up, and who does the selection? Dr. Mengele. I don't know if you heard of him. Angel of death. He was dressed impeccably. He walked around with gloves like this. And we were all lined up, and he comes to me. He says, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 14. I was only 10 and a half. He says, "You're a liar." He hits me over the face with his gloves, just like that. He says, "Take off your shirt." I take off my shirt. He says, "Turn around." I turn around. He says, "How come you're so suntanned? You know, I'm dark-skinned, and I suntan very quickly. I try not to have my shirt on often because I wanted to save it. So I only had one shirt." He says, "Suntan, oh, okay. Drop your pants." I dropped my pants. He knew I was lying, but my suntan saved me that day. I don't know what he had in mind. All the kids next to me, my little friends, he used to go like this. There was a guy behind him with a list, and he took down their tattoos. By the way, I forgot to tell you that we were tattooed about 2 or 3 weeks after getting to Birkenau. It's a story in itself. You know how you don't go to a parlor where you tattoo here with electric tattoo. It's very beautiful. No, not there. You lined up with your hand like this. There were about 4 or 5 tattoo artists. And with a pen, they stabbed you every time. Stabbed you. With the same pen on everybody. Anyway, at the selection, they took down the numbers who was pointed out by Mengele. We all went, the selection was over. All the ones that they took the numbers down were put out to the side. They were taken out and marched off to the crematorium. We were 129 kids as we came to Birkenau. They took out 75 boys that day. One of the boys, his name was Chaim Olke. He screamed, he says, Jewish blood is not water. They were taken away. They were burning 10,000 people a night. The sky was red. 4 crematoriums were working full time. You could smell the ashes all day, all night. 10 days later, Yom Kippur, there's another selection. They picked the Jewish holidays. We were left with 40 boys after the two selections. My hand swelled up from the tattooing. It was all full of pus. I didn't dare to go to the infirmary. I went to the main place where the water was running. They had a big pipe with holes in it. And I was there every time I could and run the cold water over it to wash it off, and I healed without antibiotics. They decided to move us from Camp A to Camp D. And we were happy about it because it was mainly labor camp. We were a little safer. One incident in Camp D, I was in Barrack 28, which was close to the main latrines. There was one barrack just for latrines. I felt very safe there because German SS officers would not go in there. It's below their dignity. I used to go in there and hide, sit there in the latrines, just sit there for hours. I come out one day and I see Mengele coming with a group of SS officers. I didn't have enough time to run back to the latrine, so I just made it back to my barrack. How do I hide in my barrack? The first bunk was about this high from the ground, this high, cement floor. I crawled underneath. I was a small kid, I crawled underneath. I stayed there, and I could see the black, shiny boots walk by in the barrack. What happened is that we had twins in our barrack, and he took out all the twins for experiments. When he left with all the twins, I got out. I was shaking. I was so cold. Food was brought in big barrels with two, they used to put in two pieces of wood between a barrel and carry it from the main kitchen. I worked in a detail where I was hooked up to a big wagon, about 15 kids to a wagon with ropes, and we had to drag the wagon from the crematorium. We schlepped wood, firewood from crematorium to the kitchens. This was in the winter, very cold. And when we came to the kitchen to unload, they had a bunch of barrels which were removed from the barracks, already finished. I figured that if I can take a look inside the barrel, maybe there's a little bit food left from bringing it back. So I go over, I take a look, and I see pieces of kraut, cabbage, attached to the inside of the barrel. I go inside with my feet hanging out from the barrel, and I'm scraping up the cabbage. I wasn't the only chochem. When the other kids saw that what I was doing, they were right after me, and they tried to climb into the barrels. We were all heads down in the barrels, scraping the stuff. Must have been some sight. The barrel tipped over, I got out, and I felt great. I had a little bit of food. Then the air raids started again. I could see the planes flying over. Anti-aircraft guns were shooting at them. I got out of the barrack to watch the planes, and a huge piece of shrapnel fell down right next to me. I bent down, I wanted to pick it up, and it was very hot. I ran back into the barrack, and I could have gotten killed from the huge piece of shrapnel if it hit me in the head. Then came January, Christmas time, and the German guards by the gate had a big Christmas tree. They're singing carols, and the crematoriums are burning and they're singing carols. They used to take us to showers, which was right next to the crematorium. I never knew when I was going to have water coming out from the showers or not. They had a whole procedure. You used to walk in, get undressed. There was a big barrel with antiseptics. There was a guy who used to stand there with a big broom, dunk it in the barrel, and put it over our hair, over our privates. Then we were deloused. January the 19th, they decided to evacuate Birkenau, and we walked out early in the morning on a death march. And this was really a death march. They gave us a piece of bread, and I had a long coat, an adult coat, but I tucked it in with a piece of rope. And I had a pair of wooden shoes. We started walking. We walked all day long, no stopping. Anyone who straggled was shot immediately in the back. I was in the front with all my friends, what was left of my group. And I had to relieve myself. What does one do? I ran out to the side. I had a big coat. I had to untie my rope, lift up my coat. By the time I squatted down, the column passed me. Here is the SS officer. He sees me sitting there. He takes his rifle, he puts the bolt in, and he's ready to shoot me. I said, "Hey, I'm done." I quickly put everything up, and I ran. The problem with my wooden shoes was that it was very snowy, and the snow accumulated under the wooden shoes. So instead of being 5 feet tall, all of a sudden I was 5'5", you know. I had to knock it off constantly. By the time I reached my friends in front, I was totally worn out. They grabbed a hold of me, they held on to me, and we walked arm in arm. It was already late at night, and there was an air raid. The command was everybody on the ground. I fell down on the snow. I fell asleep immediately. Everybody, aufstehen, stand up, go. I didn't want to get up. I wanted to sleep. I had illusions that I was in a camp already, that I was in bunk beds. They lifted me up and we walked again. We walked again another full day. Another night. Finally we came to a camp. I had my piece of bread. I went into the barrack, fell down on the first cot, and I fell asleep. Someone stole my piece of bread. But the group of boys that were together, they immediately spotted a guy eating that piece of bread. They jumped on him, beat the out of him, and I got my bread back. This was camp. I was in 11 camps. This was, I think, was already 9. I got a couple more to go.
How old were you at that point?
I was 11. They discontinued that camp also. Now I'm not going to go into the details.